Good to go? All right, good evening. Thank you for your patience. Call the meeting to order, please.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Melody?
Here.
Mr. Weininger?
Here.
Mrs. May? Here. And Mr. Valentine.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. We'll go with two-time social studies teacher, Mr. Scott Marple, to lead us off this evening. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Marple. Approval of the special minutes for the approval of the special minutes for the April 5th, 2021 special board meeting. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Weininger, second by Mr. Harris. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Approval of the regular minutes for the April 12th, 2021 regular meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Melody, second by Mr. Weininger. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
A little slow on
Board
Melody
notes.
and then Weininger.
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Approval of the regular work session minutes for the April 26, 2021 school board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Abstain.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 4-0 with Mr. Weininger abstaining. Approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Questions or comments? We have no executive session at the tail end of the meeting.
Can we change that?
Oh, God, Stu. I might come over at you, Stu.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Golden Shamrock Award winners. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our final Golden Shamrock presentation of the school year. It is my pleasure to introduce Ed Putnacki. Ed, come on up. Ed founded the Golden Shamrock back in 1990. Our first Golden Shamrock tonight will be presented by Renee Schwartz, who is the principal at Wyandotte Elementary School.
Good evening, everyone. It is my honor and pleasure to be the administrator that gets to talk about Gail Gentry, our Golden Shamrock Award winner. Gail has been a tremendous teacher, leader, coach for Dublin City Schools for many years, and I know there are many principals and central office staff that could be standing here today to tell you how wonderful Gail is. Gail has spent the last 34 years doing what is best for kids and enjoying learning new things every single day. Coaching through a pandemic has only made her better. From the first day she started at Wyandotte, she asked what she could do to support our learners, support our teachers, and to support our school. She was ready to be a team player from day one. She is passionate about literacy and meeting the literacy learning needs of all of our students. She works to use data to provide instruction and drive instruction. She listens to the teachers' needs and supports them as thinking partners. She constantly strives to do what is best for kids and what is best for our staff. Gail is a creative problem solver. Since we are in a unique situation with the pandemic and the time we have with our kindergarten students, we wanted to find additional opportunities and resources to provide more time for practice in those early literacy skills. Gail teamed up with the Dublin Teacher Academy and the National Honor Society from all 3 high schools to provide additional support and tutoring to over 60 kindergarten students on their AM or PM off times. Because of Gail's leadership, we believe that this partnership is only going to get stronger for many years to come. Gail Gentry is a leader, a problem solver, and a team player that every principal would want on their team. The Golden Shamrock Award for Gail Gentry is more than well deserved. Congratulations.
Okay, well, thank you for this recognition, and thank you to Renee for being always cool, calm, and collected during a crazy year, and for being creative with me and Tyler Wolf is somewhere, I think, here. There he is. It was an honor and a privilege to come together to figure out a way to support the kindergartners with our high schoolers. So we took our youngest and our oldest learners in Dublin and had them work together. This is my 34th year of teaching, and so this award is not just for me, it's for all of the colleagues that I've worked with and the administrators and the students and their families, and I still love what I do. But because I'm at year 34, I get asked a lot, when are you retiring? Are you almost done? Are you leaving soon? And I'm like, well, I still love what I do. And there's a quote where it talks about that teachers have 3 loves. And usually the answer is June, July, and August, which are really great months of the year. But the 3 things that teachers really love are they love learners, they love learning, and they love when they can put those 2 things together. And then I have another love, my husband who's in the back hiding, but he puts up with all the craziness that you bring home as a teacher. Anyone that lives with a teacher knows that we bring home stuff, lots of stuff. And he usually gently but rarely has to remind me to not talk to him like he's one of my students. That doesn't come up a lot, but it does come up a few times. So thank you for this Golden Shamrock and for letting me be a part of the Dublin Difference.
Thank you. Our second Golden Shamrock tonight will be presented by Sean Ritter, who is the principal at Bailey Elementary.
Good evening. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing 3rd grade teacher Hillary McKee. Mrs. McKee has served as a 3rd grade teacher at Bailey Elementary for the past 17 years. Throughout this time, Mrs. McKee has had an incredible impact on many colleagues and hundreds of students and families. Mrs. McKee is incredibly hardworking, dedicated, and truly embodies the professional culture of our building. While I've only had the pleasure of working with Mrs. McKee for the past 2 years, one moment during this time sticks out as the most memorable and truly describes who she is as both an educator and person. This past fall, we had a situation where we were notified late on a Friday afternoon that Mrs. McKee's entire class had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. After sharing this information, her immediate focus turned to how she could support her students and families as they quickly and unexpectedly had to transition to remote learning for the next 2 weeks. Within 3 hours, Mrs. McKee had created 23 remote learning bags, built a comprehensive remote learning schedule complete with Google Meets, and scheduled a Google Meet with her classroom parents for later that evening to answer their questions and put them at ease regarding the situation. When I asked if she wanted me or the district nurse to jump on the call, she simply replied, "I'm good, I've got this." This example, along with countless others, speaks to the character and professionalism of Mrs. McKee. She represents the best of Bailey, and we are incredibly grateful that she's part of our team. Before I introduce Mrs. McKee, I'd like to share a few words from those who nominated her for this award. If my child is late to a meeting, she texts me. It's my job to check if my child is online, but she understands that parents are also having extra work going on, and she takes the time to fill those gaps. She gives solutions and options, not just reports. She cares for kids, and if needed, she takes time away from her personal hours to respond to parents. I know that many teachers have worked extra hard this year during a once-in-a-generation global pandemic. but Hillary's ability to be flexible and seamlessly switch the class to remote and then back to in-person when they were all required to quarantine for 2 weeks in the fall was beyond impressive. The kids didn't skip an academic beat, and her COVID mitigation efforts kept our kids safe all year long. Mrs. McKee spent most of the year teaching 2 classes, one in person and one asynchronously, answering parent calls and student emails throughout the day, into the evening, and even on weekends. I've been fortunate enough to meet and work with many wonderful staff and teachers at Bailey Elementary over the last 7 years, but Hillary McKee stands out among the best of the best. I've been especially blown away with Mrs. McKee's availability, attentiveness, and support for my child. And finally, Hillary McKee is giving it all, shaping good humans, and I am so thankful my child was privileged enough to have her as a teacher. It's my pleasure to introduce Golden Shamrock Award winner, Hillary McKee.
So fun to actually be here. I always just watch. So thank you to all the families who sent in the recommendations, as well as the board, for this opportunity. And to be honest, when we got called into the staff meeting and Mr. Ritter announced that we had a Golden Shamrock winner at Bailey, I truly thought to myself, who in the world has figured out how to do a good job at this right now? And then he started reading some of the comments that were sent in, and I thought, well, you know what, that could be her, it could be him, it could be any one of these people in here. So when I found out that it was me, I was truly shocked and very honored. And although I have not been teaching nearly as long as Gail, I have been teaching 3rd grade for 20 years. But teaching during a pandemic has turned me, as well as many of my colleagues, back into first-year teachers. I've really had to refocus on what is truly important. And for me, that was creating and maintaining those relationships with my students, keeping my families involved, all while continuing to keep the academics engaging and relevant, but in a whole new way. So I've been so extremely fortunate to work under Sean Ritter, Blair Malott, and Lisa Sullivan during this time. All 3 of them extremely patient and fantastic problem solvers, which has been absolutely invaluable over the past 12 months. And I cannot say enough amazing things about my coworkers at Bailey and my really good friends all around the district. Everybody is an expert in one area or another, and we've all learned how to lean on each other for good or for bad. I'm especially thankful for my husband, Kyle, who he has a lot of IT experience. That was very helpful. I have 2 children, Casey and Eli, and their real-world knowledge of Google, thank goodness. Also, my mom and dad have turned into my own little Google Classroom experiments. I constantly was sending things to them saying, can you try this? Does this work? My mom caught on pretty quick. My dad, not so much. So lastly, it's really thanks to the Bailey families for sending us their fabulous students. They show up to school, whether that's remote, hybrid, full return. These kids are ready to learn. They're ready to take on the day. They are kind, they are patient, they are loving, and they are always excited for what is to come. So thank you very much.
Mr. Marsh, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Good evening. I have a few items I wanted to touch on the HR agenda items tonight. It's one of those nights where we get to celebrate, so it is exciting to be up here and have a few special recommendations for the Board of Education tonight. On the certified agenda, we'd like to point out we do have a few stipends for your approval. A couple of those are related to training that will be happening over the summer, Orton Gillingham training, DCS virtual, some course development, and then one stipend related to our RTI coaches at the secondary level. Also, item 1 on the certified agenda tonight, I'd like to say thank you to Leandra Yates, one of our Scioto High School assistant principals that will be moving on to a new opportunity, so thank you to her support and service in the district. Item 2 is one of those special recommendations that we'll be making to the board that we're very excited about. And as you can see, item 2 is asking for your approval for Jamie Stewart to be the next principal at Davis Middle School. very excited for her and to make that recommendation on behalf of Superintendent Dr. Marchhausen. Also, item 3, you'll notice that Lori Messy, who is one of our interns here at Emerald Campus, will be moving into a program coordinator position with your approval. And also, again, that's a celebration, as well as Julie Moses, who's here tonight. With your approval, we'll be moving into the Eversole Run Middle School assistant principal as a first assistant principal at Eversole Run Middle School. So lots of things to celebrate tonight. You'll also notice on the certified agenda that this really is the middle of the hiring season. So we have 40 teachers that we're asking for your approval tonight. And again, I've said that before, but I would say it again, our principals are doing an outstanding job right now in the midst of spring with all they have to do to interview and work through and find the very best teachers for our students for next school year. So thank you to our building principals. On the classified agenda tonight, just one item to highlight. Carol Dixon, our Kaufman High School registrar, is retiring after 30 years service to the district. So thank you to Carol and for her service to the district. I think that's all for me tonight, unless there's any questions.
Gail, just a quick comment. I saw on the teachers that a couple of them were former Dublin kids, and that's always great to see that our kids want to come back to the district and be teachers in our district. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. Thank you.
And that they're well qualified for the positions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, if I'm looking to my right, it's because Board Docs, the program that we use, is slow this evening. So, no, yeah, it's I checked with Brian. It's recommended by the Superintendent, the Board of Education, approve items 4A, 4B, and 4C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. May. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Congratulations, and thank you very much again. With that said, as we've gotten through the items of the hirings this evening, if you want to leave at this stage, we'll take a brief break to allow those who need to get out of here to leave. That happens, we forgot to tell you. Public participation, visitor comments. We have one individual signed up this evening. Mr. Griffith. Oh, there you are. Please state your full name and address. We typically limit public participation to around 3 minutes. Seeing that you're the only one this evening, we'll give you some flexibility with that.
I'll try to keep it quick, Mr. Valentine. Dr. Marchhausen, thank you. I'm Brian Griffith at 3852 Carberry Drive, and I come here today to talk about COVID safety and particularly the plans for this fall. As you may know from my email, and I appreciate Mr. Valentine engaging in a conversation so that we could work on some of those points. The virtual school decision had to be made by this past Friday. That was an extension of the original deadline. That period of time during which parents were asked to make a decision about their children's safety and education for the fall came between board meetings when public participation was permitted. It also came very quick with months ahead during a time when a pandemic is changing on a week-to-week basis. Just today, the vaccine has been authorized for 12 to 15-year-olds. I'm hopeful that will help a great deal, although that only represents about half of our students. So we still have a lot of children, including one of my own, who will not be eligible for the vaccine at this time. And I'm being asked to make a decision about what is safe for that child in the fall without having any options. That leaves me with the choice of rolling the dice and hoping that in the fall we'll feel like it's safe for him to go back to school, or pulling him out of the Dublin schools altogether. And that's an unfortunate choice that I have to make because you guys have not provided the kind of flexibility and timing that makes that easy for parents. I know that's a difficult decision for you. You guys have resources and things that you have to schedule, and I know how difficult that must be. And I don't know what the solution is necessarily, but I think that there could have at least been a period of time that allowed parents to come and provide some input at a school board meeting, have a chance for parents to have some advance notice that that was coming and to think about that and seek out some advice. I'm also here because I'm concerned that parents have no information about whether teachers will be vaccinated and staff will be vaccinated. And I know through my conversations with staff and with Mr. Valentine that the school board is taking the position that it's too risky for you guys to ask that question of teachers. Mr. Valentine knows very well that my law firm advises businesses all across the state of Ohio. I'm not here to give you legal advice, but as a parent, it is my evaluation that that's a cop-out. That it is certainly within your rights to safely to tell teachers and staff that for the safety of everybody involved, we can't have people in our buildings who are not vaccinated. I know that decision for students is more difficult, and we're primarily relying on the Ohio legislature there. But when it comes to teachers and staff, you guys have control over that. And you can choose what is safe and who you can admit to the building based upon the public safety there. Finally, I do have an ask, and that is that whatever safety rules you set for the fall, that you set them early and you stick to them, so that as we're trying to decide whether it's safe to send our kids to school, we know well in advance that people will be wearing masks, that all of the safety precautions that are available will be followed, so that we don't have to make those decisions at the last minute as you would suddenly make some changes on a short notice. So those are my requests, and I ask that you take a leadership role here and do what you can to help protect the kids and not just fall to what seems like a crazy public opinion that is swaying completely away from safety at the moment. So thank you so much for all of you and everything you do for our kids.
Thank you. All right, looks like board docs is back and rolling. Board President, Board of Education comments. Does anybody have anything to report out this evening?
I'll say that we had a Business Advisory Council meeting last week. It was Dr. Marshausen's first meeting, so it was a great just introduction meeting to the committee and all the members. So I think it's off to a good start, getting a good foundation together. It was the last meeting of the year, so we'll be able to hit the ground running next fall.
Awesome. Anything else? All right. First, superintendent's report as the official superintendent, Dublin City Schools.
You're missing something.
Did I jump ahead of? Oh, well, I'll go ahead. Brian, do we need to approve you?
Well, I don't want my auditors to do that, so we better go ahead and do that.
All right. It's recommended the Board of Education approve the resolution to reappoint Mr. Brian L. Kern as the treasurer CFO. Whereas pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3319.01, the Board of Education desire to reappoint Brian L. Kern as the treasurer CFO of the Dublin City School District commencing August 1st, 2021, consistent with and subject to the terms set forth in the contract for that purpose submitted by the Board of Education's president for consideration by the Board of Education at this meeting. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby does, 1, authorize and direct its president and vice president to execute forthwith on its behalf the aforesaid contract, and 2, so reappoint Mr. Kern as treasurer CFO of the Dublin City School District as of the aforesaid date of August 1st, 2021, upon his likewise executing this contract. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Any questions or comments? We'll talk after. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. I'd just like to say a few words at this point. Brian has continued, as many of the folks in this room know, been steady at the helm for us as we continue to navigate the pandemic and going back through his time as the treasurer here, as well as his long history before that working within the district, and having seen what that has meant to us as a board, what that has meant to this community. It's with the ultimate satisfaction that we're able to bring this vote this evening and lock you up for another 5 years. Anybody else have anything to say at this time?
You're a very patient person.
We like you a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. All right, now the first report from Dr. Marshausen.
Okay, first of all, Mr. Kern, congratulations. Look forward to 5 years working with you and good being on the same cycle. So that's great. On behalf of myself and Jen and Tanya and Benice, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who came to our reception this evening. It was great to see so many community members, community leaders here, to see, I think, the entire Indian Run staff come to congratulate Jen, and most of those folks aren't speaking to me right now, as they're not happy that we've stolen her to come over here to serve as deputy superintendent. The four of us are very excited to be here in Dublin and to begin our work together as we transition into these new roles. So thank you for everyone who came to that. Couple updates. There were some questions that came our way from Franklin County Public Health and related to masks at recess during the remainder of this school year. Franklin County Public Health, in alignment with the Ohio Department of Health, are recommending that masks remain a mandatory safety precaution mitigation strategy for us at recesses. In a conversation with Commissioner Mazzola, he said, let's stay the course for the final 3 weeks of this school year. So we will maintain that mandate for us. As was mentioned, the CDC just approved this afternoon emergency use authorization for 12 to 15-year-olds. I've already had a phone conversation with Commissioner Mazzola to look at the potential for us to be able to, like we did for our high school students, to be able to provide an opportunity for parents who choose to have their 12 to 15-year-olds vaccinated, for us to be a community partner in that role. There have been some questions about athletics and quarantine rules. And as the gentleman who spoke earlier mentioned, we have to adapt and adjust as there are changes. I know that OHSAA is looking at quarantine rules for vaccinated high school students, and what does this mean as they begin to plan for the fall. And we will continue to work with our health partners, the public health officials, as we develop what are our mitigation efforts, our strategies, and our safety protocols as we prepare for the start of school in August. And I think the board members that I've spoken to, like I, have a great deal of hope that we're going in the right direction, that we're going to see changes that allow us to provide what would be, and I'll use air quotes, a more normal start to our school year. But a lot's going to depend on what happens over the next 3 months. And we will continue to work with those health officials as we go through those different ideations of what happens. I had the opportunity to meet with our student advisory group last week. Great group of young people. Got to congratulate our graduating seniors and ask them what are things that have worked really well with student advisory, what would they like to change. Phenomenal conversations with that as well. Two final things. We are working at the request of several parents, and thanks to Dr. Deagle and her leadership, on overnight trips, band trips, all of those things that take advanced planning, that we're not able to just say, yes, we're going to go to Washington, D.C. with our 8th graders. So as we have these conversations, we will, of course, be communicating with the board and with moms and dads. And then finally, my friend Imran is here this evening, and I think it's important that we recognize that the fast of Ramadan breaks on Wednesday, and we support our students who will be celebrating. We support our community who will be celebrating an important event in the Muslim calendar. So thank you for being here in support, and we want to recognize the diversity that makes this community so special. And we do that and we celebrate with you. Mr. Valentine, there are 2 recommendations on the agenda. Both of these recommendations will bring our administrative staff in line with a 2% increase in the base in their salary for 2021 and 2022, and then 22-23, which brings them in line with our teachers, and the same for our technical staff. And thanks to Cheryl and our conversation last week, we believe we'll be able to bring an action item at the second meeting in May that will bring DSA in line as well. So thank you, Cheryl, for the opportunity to meet this week.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve items 7B and 7C? Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Harris. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Treasurer's Office.
There's a few things on the agenda this evening. We'll just kind of go in order of the agenda. We do have an appropriation change. If you recall, about a week and a half ago, we closed on a refunding of a 2011 and 2013 issue. As far as we have to record this on the books and stuff and the transfer back and forth. So we approved that appropriation. By the way, just a reminder that refunding saved us approximately $2 million in our debt service fund. So next thing is a approval of a transfer as we're closing out, trying to close out actually class of 2021 already of Jerome from $500 to the class of 24. We have a donation from Walmart of some school supplies, approximately $750 to the district. A pallet full actually of new school supplies, sorry. We also have one of those things that we have to do, talking about issuing debt. We do have a resolution for post-issuance compliance policy as part of new SEC rules. Really what this is about is how we go about and evaluate. For example, we did a private bank placement this last time, and so, which is kind of not the normal going through the ratings process and everything you normally do. This compliance policy is kind of trying to take a look at when you need to report those, which called the EMA system, which is with investors and compliance and regulators would look at. So we will, of course, be filing that underneath this transaction underneath EMA, but this is kind of a policy that we're required to have underneath new SEC rules. And finally, we do have the approval of the Ohio Health Athletic Training Services Agreement this evening and the Healthcare Collaboration Agreement. I'd like to thank the Ohio Health folks over here. Stephanie, Eddie, and Jason, I think, is here too. We appreciate our partnership with Ohio Health and the Athletic Training Services that we started 5 years ago at this time. So this is a renewal for 3 years. Same terms, but one added feature is we do have the sports performance piece working out each at our high school level. And we also have, with the opening of Eversole Run, some supplies and startup monies to get that training room started. So we're really happy about this, to get this renewed and going again. And I know we're looking on Andres, I know we're looking at Ohio Health to do some private clinics or clinic stuff for some of our students and families. I know we'll hopefully have that wrapped up here in the next month or so. So we there again appreciate our collaboration with Ohio Health. So, and finally, one last thing, I'd like to thank you for your confidence in me and renewing for 5 years. When I had the chance 5 years ago to come back to the district, I jumped at it. It's because of not only the board, but it's also the other people in this room. Unfortunately, some of us are leaving, but we have some new exciting people here in here too as we move forward. So thanks again for your confidence in me in position. So.
All right, Treasurer recommends items 8B through 8F. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Department of Academics and Student Learning.
Good evening. We have a few items for your review tonight. The first is the first time that you are seeing our school calendar for the year 22-23. Just as a reminder, each year we do have a calendar committee that consists of DEA, DSA, a few parents, and administrators. We have two options for the public and for our Board of Education to review this evening. We will bring these calendars back to you in June for your approval, for just one. Also this evening, we would like to review with you some changes to our social studies and to our visual arts standards for grades K-12. So at this time, I'd like to invite Jill Reinhardt up to introduce her team.
Good evening, President Valentine, Dr. Marshhausen, members of the board, gentlemen. You can come over this way if you'd like. We are here tonight, as we are each May, as we complete our phase 1 of the curriculum review, and tonight it is for social studies and visual arts. And so we are here tonight to share a little bit of that work and also to answer any questions you might have as you look at this first reading. So I will begin. Let me go back because I want you to see. I want you to see the members of our teaching community that work together to present this first reading for you tonight. But first I want to introduce who's up here with me. Nick Bertrams is a 4th grade teacher at Hopewell Elementary School and also serves as our elementary district social studies lead. Seth Martin was the Remote Learning Academy teacher this year, 6th grade at Davis Middle School, and serves as the middle school district social studies lead. And then we have Scott Marple, who knows how to say the Pledge of Allegiance and also is our high school district lead and works at Scioto High School. So not only did these 3 educators learn how to switch to a remote learning environment and the technology and all of the instructional strategies that went along with the changes this year, but they also led these teachers in looking at our social studies curriculum and making revisions. So I commend them for that and thank them. I also want to say that never in my life as an educator has there been a time where, as a curriculum person, the world outside of our building and the work that we were doing in curriculum were so closely aligned. As you think about the global pandemic and what we were faced with our local, state governments and the various committees we had, and as well as our rights to peacefully protest, as well as a inauguration, a presidential election, and impeachment and insurrection, and all the economic crises that have come along with the pandemic, there's a lot of areas of social studies that link to our curriculum. So I'm going to start here with the National Council. So the National Council for Social Studies Education has primarily told us what our responsibilities are in teaching of social studies. And it really is to help young people make informed and reasoned decisions in a very culturally diverse and democratic society. Ohio also helps us know what we should do for social studies, and that is a promotion of civic competence. And they tell us what civic competence looks like from their perspective. Our state also tells us there are basically 4 strands in the social studies curriculum, and you'll see those in the documents that you have in front of you. It is history, geography, government, and economics. But the question really is for us here in Dublin, which is, what do we believe a world-class social studies education should look like for our kids? What is it that we want to focus on and study? And that's what you see being presented to you this evening. So we begin with that question every year, as you know, and we start with surveying our parents. And so we had about 2,600 parents respond to our survey, along with a number of committees that met with me throughout the year. We had staff, about 300 staff members, and about 1,400 grades 6 through 12 students respond to the questions you see there, which is, do you believe social studies is going to help you or your child in the future? What are the top 3 areas you believe everyone should study in social studies? And the 2 characteristics of the profile of a learner. And then we left it open for some open comments. And there were a lot of them, as you well know, that we read every single one of them, and we coded them, and we looked at the trends. Here's the survey results. We clearly have our parents saying that social studies is a valued curriculum area. Our teachers are at 99%, and our kids, they're about 82%. They think it's okay. And then along with that, you can see where our parents felt were those top areas for us to study. And you'll see histories, modern world, as well as American history, government. And then if you remember 5 years ago, our community said, we want more of an emphasis on economics and financial literacy. And this board said, we agree, and we decided to make that a mandated part of a graduate. And so our parents said, yeah, we like that, keep that. So we heard that repeatedly. But the emphasis this time around was really in geography. A little bit more geography and a little bit more American history. Our parents also told us that their top trait that they want us to study and support is critical thinking. So our parents, students, and staff all selected critical thinking as the top profile of a learner trait that they wanted to see us spend time on. And if you think about critical thinking, you need to have multiple perspectives to do critical thinking. You need to have something that's worthy to debate and discuss and dialogue and think about. So it's a perfect skill for us to think about in our social studies classrooms. When we collected the feedback, the open-ended responses, we coded that feedback. I think Mr. Harris joined one of our social studies parent meetings one evening and heard some of that conversation. And what we found was the feedback sort of fell in some basic areas. One is our parents said, please help our kids really understand the 3 equal branches of government. Please help our kids learn about inventors and scientists and mathematicians and all the people that have been positive contributors to our country, not just from one culture group, but from lots of cultural groups. And they still were very interested in finance. Along with that, when we coded the feedback, there was a large group of parents that talked about looking at our history from the perspectives of lots of different people. Take a look at the time period, not just from one viewpoint, but from many viewpoints. Take a look at historical figures and understand them, such as Thomas Jefferson, who wrote All Men Are Created Equal, yet he enslaved over 600 people. The whole picture of a person of history is critical to understand the American story. And then compare and contrast, such as Martin Luther King and Gandhi, Mandela, or some of the women in women's history. Compare and contrast those people. What makes them the same? What makes them different? What about the time periods that they were living in that impacted their lives? And then tipping points. To understand events that led up to major moments in history, the rise of Hitler, the fall of Rome, the destruction of the Berlin Wall, all of those important tipping points in history was something that our parents said, please help our kids understand and comprehend the complexity of those events. So in front of you, you see a new vision. Many, many people looked at that vision. Lots of wordsmithing, right? Lots of wordsmithing from our parents. So please take time to take a look at that between now and next board meeting when we'll vote on this graded course study. Along with phase 1, we always come out with a vision, but we also look at what are our instructional agreements. And we agreed to continue an inquiry approach towards social studies instruction in a workshop model, something called the C3 framework, which is college, career, and civics, which is a best practice for instructional approach in social studies. It starts with compelling questions, questions like what makes a community? Why does where you live impact how you live? Big questions that kids can think about and learn about in order to answer and debate and critically think about. And then we also included in this graded course of study an area about history and heritage, where we've outlined certain dates or months that we want to make sure to recognize, to celebrate and understand different culture groups. We always look at the graduation requirements, and you can be assured that the graded course and study in front of you does ensure that kids will reach these requirements with American history, American government, a half unit of world history. Our financial literacy requirement will remain. And then the law does outline primary documents that we're sure to teach, such as the Declaration of Independence, the Northwest Ordinance, the Constitution. And then this year, for the first time, you will see when kids graduate, you will hear about the citizenship seal. And the citizenship seal will be on many of our kids' diplomas. 1,028, as a matter of fact, have reached the requirements in order to get the citizenship seal. Our topics in K-8 have remained relatively the same. You can take a look at that. The shifts in elementary, though, are outlined here, and Nick is available if you have any questions about those. But there's more of an emphasis on financial literacy at young ages. We took a look at making sure, again, that our literature and our online resources, focus on multiple perspectives, and we're revising the compelling questions. High school, we've kept the same courses with a new course, Contemporary World Issues, which is actually a revamped global politics course. And then there have been 2 electives that we're adding, African American Studies and Women's Studies, and you'll see that in the course handbook. Dr. Bailey and her team will finish that work up. Our teachers have started. The big secondary shifts that you'll see in the graded course of study is that, again, we have some revised compelling questions, more of a focus on geography. Our modern world history teachers took some time to really look at our geography standards. We've adjusted some pacing in middle school so that Rome and Greece and the classical age are balanced with the Middle Age and the Renaissance. Again, multiple perspectives were looked at, inclusion of Americans that impacted society, and then the shifts I told you about with courses. Our resources this time around, when you look at the graded course of study, back in the day, I would have come to you and said, we're looking at this textbook that we would like to adopt. In the age of open source and with the many, many resources that are available for our teachers, we have a variety of online subscriptions, all kinds of websites, and resources that our teachers can use. So when you look at the graded course of study, you'll see a laundry list of recommended resources per course. And lastly, our next steps then will be, once the graded course of study is approved, we will take that, make sure we update our curriculum wiki, roll it out to our teachers, and then we have a Dublin history site that is in the process of being updated as well. So we'll spend some time sharing our new curriculum with our teachers, and the baton will be passed to Dr. Bailey, who will then provide a lot of professional development with the 3 educators you see here. What questions do you have for myself or for any one of the gentlemen behind me?
Hey, Jill, that's great.
Hey, Stu, thanks.
The Dublin history that you just popped up,
Yeah.
will that have all of the cool sources that you have in here?
Yeah, so the Dublin history, it's like a website that they actually have collected video of different places around town and the history behind it and some of the other.
Dublin.
It's local
Okay,
Dublin.
cool.
Sorry.
And then on our Dublin Schools website, would a parent or a student be able to find the sources?
Yes,
that are in here?
we'll post that graded course of study on our regular Dublin website. And then we'll also have it internal to the wiki for teachers.
Excellent, okay.
Yeah,
Very comprehensive, very well done.
thank you, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn?
I mean,
wanna
Mrs.
say
May, I'm very proud of your all's working on growing critical thinkers, especially in these times. I'm grateful for your open minds because these are different times. So thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing this roll out and what you have to bring.
Thank you.
Not at this time. It's board meeting. We'll gladly talk with you afterwards. Any other questions, Mr. Melody or Mr. Harris? I think one question that's more open-ended, and Dr. Marshausen, please jump in, and Jill, as you pass the baton, we've clearly been through a lot this year, and you highlighted a number of the local, state, national events that we've been through, and we're reevaluating this curriculum. We're looking at things such as the different perspectives, and so one of the challenges that we often get through email is certain occurrences and things that go on. Some people agreeing, some people not, left, right, whatever the end of the spectrum. And so I guess my question, and Dr. Marshausen, this may fall more on your plate because it's a question that we get from members of the community, is how is that balance achieved in a way that we are providing new opportunities with ways to dive into social studies, American history, world history, so on and so forth. How is that balance achieved in a way that allows parents within the community to hopefully understand the correct intentions of our staff and of our administrative team to ensure that we are navigating those difficult issues and that conflict as best as possible?
You want me to? I can answer that a little bit, and then Dr. Marshausen, feel free to jump on board there. A teacher always has lots of perspectives in a classroom. And so one of the things that we have found is important is to make sure that all those voices are heard in a classroom. I received many of the communications that you all did during the year, and it tended to fall around a particular resource or a belief that a teacher was only providing one view in a classroom. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that this curriculum supports is the idea that there are multiple viewpoints and perspectives. There's multiple viewpoints and perspectives around a lot of historical events that happen in modern times and in long ago. So that's part of the role of the teacher, is to provide that information for kids and allow kids to think through that. It's part of the inquiry process as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I know that there were a number of parents who contacted me around a particular resource. I would hear, you better put that into your classrooms, and if you put that into your classrooms, I'm going to pull my kids from Dublin City Schools. Both perspectives were in our community. And so it was a resource, quite frankly, that we decided not to use, and instead looked for other resources that weren't as divisive, but still provided kids with the information that they need in order to live in a very diverse, rich, culturally rich community. So I don't know if you want to add anything?
I also think one of the things that we're committed to doing, and having Dr. Hamilton here as part of this conversation, is providing our teachers with the training to create the classroom environments at an age-appropriate level that allows our students to feel safe, talking about how they feel and what their view of history is. And what we would encourage all of our parents to do is to then have conversations with your children at home. That the conversations that we have in our classrooms should be a jumping off point for conversations at the dinner table, in the home environment, as we have a diverse community and we now have all of these resources moms and dads can see. Our kids are coming home with the resources on their devices. and they're able to share with you. And it truly does take all of us working together and having this broad appreciation and the ability to have critical conversations. And it came out through your work as a team that critical conversations and those critical thinking skills are essential. And that's what we want to be able to build. And we enjoy the conversations with parents, but there isn't a single resource. There isn't a single perspective that we're promoting. We're promoting an openness, a conversation, and the opportunity to be exposed to many different viewpoints in what makes us what we are in Dublin, in Ohio, and across this country.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
All right, I was going to pass the baton for just a little bit because it wasn't just social studies that we did, although we spent most of our time there. I do want to have Mrs. Marple come up for the visual arts piece, which is just a quick. Thank you.
For the record, this is the rare occurrence that we get both Marples in the same evening.
I know. I think we ought to all take note of that.
Dr. Marchhausen, President Valentine, Board of Education, thank you for the opportunity to come forward tonight with our visual arts graded course of study. I have behind me, oops, it is quick, that first, maybe, there we go. I have behind me 3 of our fantastic teacher leaders in Dublin City Schools. I have Amy Cowan, who is the art teacher at Old Sawmill Elementary and remote asynchronous teacher extraordinaire. Todd Arnold, who is a middle school art teacher at Grizel, and Sarah Rothwell, who is an art teacher at both Kaufman High School and here at Emerald Campus. And over the last few years, we've had an opportunity to come together as a K-12 team and really discuss what creativity and visual arts looks like in Dublin City Schools. And our visual arts teachers have pushed themselves as learners to really rethink what they do in the classroom. And in front of you, I think you'll see tonight that they've landed in a place with K-12 vertical articulation that is impressive for a visual arts team. You'll see here, this is the vision that we landed on, and Jill did a nice job of outlining what our curriculum review process looks like. Our vision team started meeting in January. They reviewed current research and literature, including looking at Project Zero out of Harvard. Our teachers have done a lot of work with the Columbus Museum of Art. We looked at some research from the Brookings Institute, and also spent time in Ohio Department of Education's revised standards, as well as spoke with some local artists and people in the field to find out what our education can provide for our learners. And this is where we landed. You will note that there are 6 bullets there, and these are well aligned with the profile of a learner in Dublin City Schools. And these 6 areas represent what we believe are the dispositions of an artist and a way that we can transfer the skill of art making to our students in a way that they can use it academically, but also in life. And you can see this visualized here for you, those 6 areas that we hope will become the center of our elementary, middle, and high school art classrooms. And then finally, you have in front of you for a first reading our graded course of study for kindergarten up through high school. And these words along the right-hand side, creating, performing, responding, and connecting, these are the enduring understandings for K-12 visual arts education. And our teachers spent time this spring digging into their grade level standards around these 4 ideas and putting them in those 6 dispositions of an artist so that they can think about the areas that they're focused as they're instructing students. Through this standards alignment, you'll note that there is a focus on creativity and play in K-5 through Maker and through art education. And then as you move up through middle and high school, the focus moves towards skills refinement. And then our high school artists I'm sure you have seen the wonderful, wonderful products that they put out, but also the process in our classrooms behind that. And we work to articulate that as our students start to build portfolios and really flourish as artists. Do you have any questions for myself or the team of excellent teachers behind me?
Don't think so at this time.
We thank you.
Appreciate all the time that you guys have put into this. Thank you.
President Valentine, for your and the board's approval tonight, we do have one resolution, which is to continue our membership in OHSAA for the next school year.
All right, and just to revisit what Jill had said, pending any change, the vote for the social studies and visual arts graded courses studies would be on next board meeting. So if you have questions in between now and then, please make sure that you get with Jill, and she'll make sure that she takes care of it or figures out who can best answer it. It is recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve the attached resolution authorizing continued membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris, second by Mrs. May. And just real quick, Brian, can you touch on the change in membership fees from Ohio High School?
Yeah, Ohio High School just recently announced they're going to be charging a fee per sport, which is, I believe, the first time ever they have done that. They have relied on playoff gates either through football and especially basketball and wrestling. The winter sports cancellation in 2020, I think, really hurt them from a financial perspective. So they decided to institute this policy probably more for a solvency type aspect more than anything. So they continued their existence. Get into fancy accounting terms there, right? So that'll be that next year will be the first time for that. So.
All right.
Brian, do we have an estimate as to approximately how much it will cost us?
I think it was $100, I think, per.
It was even less than that.
Whatever per sports, and I think
50.
Tom, you can tell me, we probably have 27 sports or so. 26, yeah. So do the math there. You're looking.
Thank you.
So it's nothing that's going to make us cut programs?
No, nothing to cut.
Small fee.
And in some ways, it's nice that they're not passing that on by increasing ticket prices to all of the tournaments, because one of the options was to jack those up even more, and I think that it's hindered some folks being able to go to some of those. So I think that it's probably a good move for them, for folks who want to go watch their kids at some of these tournament games.
All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to Department of Operations.
Good evening, Dr. Marshhouse and President Valentine, members of the board. We have operations has 2 items for your review and approval tonight. The first one is we're recommending that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution to extend our existing agreement with Chartwells by 1 more year. As you know, Chartwells has a 1-year agreement with 4 1-year renewals. This would be our 3rd 1-year renewal. Chartwells has been a phenomenal partner over the last year, especially with COVID, the delivering of food, their flexibility. And on top of all of that, contractually, our increase should be by CPIU, which is the All Urban Consumers Food Away from Home. That's what our increase is based upon, and that would have been 3.9%. And working with Chartwells and the value that this account is, they reduced that to 2%. So it's really shows the strength of the partnership and the job that they're doing. The second item for your approval tonight is, we talked earlier as one of the summer projects is asphalting. and we publicly bid this, and we are recommending that Americoat Asphalt and Concrete be awarded a contract of $243,605. They were the lowest responsible bid. We had quite a few bidders, as you'll see from the attached. And this work is to do crack fill and seal at Chapman Elementary, Penny, Riverside, Scottish Corners, Grizel Middle School, Sells Middle School, Davis Middle School, Kaufman High School, and also to repair walking paths at Riverside Elementary, Grizel, and Davis. Those are the two items I have tonight, if there's any questions.
Just a comment. I love talking to the food service people, and I think Chartwell's has done an excellent job with the service, especially with COVID and getting the lunches
Absolutely.
out to the community, those people that would not be able to get a lunch otherwise. And so I really appreciate that. The one thing that I would comment is that I do talk to a lot of food service people, and they have great ideas, and I hope that the management of Chartwell's will think of ways that they can get input from their food service workers to improve their operations, because I think there's a lot of good suggestions out there.
To that point, Chartwell's is phenomenal with their employee relations. They have internal awards programs, and they also have internal feedback to that point. But we'll make sure. We have a very good management team that Chartwell's has put together over the last 3 or 4 years that has really come together. But I will definitely pass along your suggestion.
All right. It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education, approve items 12A and 12B. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Hello again, everyone. May is a very busy time in communication, so I just want to go over a couple of things that we did last week. Last week was Staff Appreciation Week, and we had a series of 14 short videos go out throughout the week. More than 2,100 folks looked at those, so we appreciate everybody taking a look at that work. We have been busy communicating plans with our senior parents and our senior students about graduation upcoming, and there's some more communication scheduled this week around the specifics of tickets, and that will go out Friday afternoon, so just for your information. Last week, we taped our military signee video that came out really nice last year in lieu of a ceremony. Obviously, next spring, we hope to get back to an in-person ceremony honoring those students who've chosen to serve the country by joining a branch of the military. And so we did record that at the library downtown last week, so that'll be out later this month. On Friday, I had the opportunity to speak at the Dublin Arts Council time capsule bearing. We had about 450 students participate in this program with the Dublin Arts Council, and some of their artwork was captured, and it was a very nice opportunity for our students to capture this moment in time. And I told the folks then that while the pandemic will be part of that narrative, it won't be the entire narrative. And this will be opened in 2033, and so these elementary and high school students that participated will have the opportunity to look back at this time and when that time comes. Looking ahead to the summer, we just talked about Chartwell's. There will be a summer lunch program again this year where we will have free meals. I think there are 4 schools, Jeff, that are pickup points, and then Wright will do its usual summer lunch program. So the information about that will go out shortly. Don't want to confuse it with the current in-school lunches right now, but pretty soon that'll go out. Summer camps and activities, we've been putting that information out for quite a while, so we'll continue to do that. And then finally, both the memorial tournament and a lot of our local employees are seeking teen folks right now. The memorial tournament is running short of volunteers, and so they asked us to give a shout out to our high school folks to see if they'd be interested in that. And we do have a lot of local businesses who are looking to hire for the summer still. So we have all those resources on our website, so I'd encourage folks to visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Any questions or comments as a follow-up? There being none, items for board discussion and future agenda items. All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. May. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? 5-0. We are adjourned.